Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Podcasters in dismay and struggling to come up with reaction as football this weekend was, it says here, quite excellent. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Chelsea had to go 120 minutes, implode. Kepa won't leave the nets. Sarri's going crazy. Caballero looks like he wants to kill someone, and they wind up losing anyway. United and Liverpool play out a bore scoreless draw where everybody for United left injured in the first half. Spurs lost quite hilariously to Burnley with Pochettino going nuts at Mike Dean, and we won comfortably. It is literally the platonic ideal of a football weekend, minus the fact that we're chasing fourth place instead of a title. But it was pretty fucking excellent, and if you can't get excited about that, then maybe this isn't the sport for you. You don't get much better than Arsenal winning comfortably and a ton of Schadenfreude going down at the same time. So enjoy it. Soak it up. It's good stuff. Paul's here. He's on Twitter at Paz My Pants. Hello, Paz.
Platonic indeed. I didn't get to have any sex this weekend.
Well, maybe the first thing you need to do is sign up for the Enclosed. We can tell you more about that down the road. Tim's here. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
The only reason it's not the platonic ideal of a footballing weekend is there's no Clive on this podcast. So for the six of you left, we are going to talk about the Arsenal and what was, I thought, a quite satisfactory 2-0 victory. Tim, I'll start with you. I think, you know, there are a lot of people that are kind of just fed up with the back three and feel that it has been the cause of all our misery and despair, that it is emblematic.
I blamed him for that.
Yeah, it's Tim's fault. That is emblematic of the conservatism of the coach. But whatever the agenda or narrative associated with it, the back three has kind of become public enemy number one, and it was ditched, and we went with the back four. And I have to admit, we looked pretty darn good. And I thought the selection reflected all the things that I felt we didn't really have early in the season, an understanding of rotating. We have 3 games in the league this week. We have the Europa League coming back. Lacazette can't play in the Europa League, so he was picked this week. Just kind of felt like a savvy, smooth selection. I mean, was this the first time all season where you kind of looked at all the choices and everything that happened, how things clicked into place in the rotation, and you just said, sure, this feels like how the club should be run and how we should be doing it?
Yeah. I felt in the way we played in the first half, this was the first time in a little while where I kind of remembered what Emery ball is, or our like very early kind of estimations of it. This was a little bit more like what we were playing earlier in the season, and you know, albeit it wasn't always brilliant, and it wasn't always, but you know, that 4-2-3-1. I think basically what you saw in this game was who Emery's guys are. You know, it was Iwobi and Mkhitaryan, Ramsey kind of doing that high press number 10, and you've got Lacazette up front, and Arsenal obviously set up a little bit for the high press. So did Southampton, which actually played into Arsenal's hands.
Totally agree.
They did that, playing it around the back and sucking them in, and then going over the top and finding room. And you know, and I think you just saw, maybe with the slight exception of Guendouzi, who's clearly one of, you know, Emery's guys. This was very much, I think we got kind of Emery's vision a little bit more for how he likes to set up, and the players that are best placed to do it. Whereas, you know, Ozil and maybe even Aubameyang, who's a great goal scorer, but doesn't necessarily slot into the team per se, because all he really does is take shots at goal. So instead, you had what I think was close to Emery's best unit. And again, that doesn't mean his 11 best players. That just means the players best suited to what he wants to do. And some of the football we saw in the first half, I said to the guys I go with at half time, I was like, this is the first time I've enjoyed watching Arsenal in quite a long time. And you know, the Chelsea game was, I think, tactically very well thought out. I still think if Chelsea had a half decent striker at that point, maybe if they had Higuain, we might that game might have played out differently. But still, the plan was good, and we executed it. Against Spurs, look, everyone enjoys a victory over Spurs, but that was genuinely exhilarating because we played in two different ways. In the first half an hour, we went after them, we pressed high, and then in the last half an hour, we brought on Ramsey and Lacazette, did that split striker thing and kind of pulled Tottenham apart. But this was the first time we'd kind of beaten up on one of the little guys, I think, since Fulham away. Maybe back in October when we beat them 5-1. This felt like the first time, we really saw something we've lost for the last few months, which was, this is, I remember this. This was kind of how it looked like we were at least trying to play at the beginning of the season. And that was incredibly pleasing. And that first half, particularly the last kind of 15 minutes of the half, I thought we played some of the best football we played this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So let me just follow up with you for 1 second, Tim. I mean, I have kind of thought that Emery's football has looked best and his tactical preparations approach has looked best in the big games and fairly drab and poor in some of the small games. Now, in a big game, even if you look good, we don't have the best team in the world. You're still going to lose your fair share of those games, even if you look better. Do you think the fact that we played a team that wanted to come out and press and give us passing lanes to play around the press and allow us to build the play the way he wants to, and really did give us those options on the wings to get into space and create attacks sort of in the way that we're set up to do it. Do you think this was sort of the first time we've seen, I guess the best way I could say it is his sort of big game approach work against a smaller team because the smaller team played the way the bigger teams tend to?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard a lot of, I don't know for myself with my own eyes, but certainly that was one of the things I'd read about Hasenhüttl, when he came here, that he had that very kind of high press approach and it looked like we were ready for it this time. And yeah, absolutely. And you saw, I think Leno had his best game in a while, and that's because he's a very... And I think some of that came from the fact that his distribution is very useful in games like this. I know some people have kind of had some qualms about him going long quite a lot because they'd heard about what a good passer he was and things like that. But actually, I think he pretty much always makes good decisions with the ball. And sometimes, he doesn't always have to go short or to the fullback or to the centre half. Sometimes the good decision is to go long. And particularly if you're trying to suck opponents in, I think he's pretty judicious with the ball at his feet. And I think you got the best performance from him for a while. We got the best performance from Kolasinac for a while, who also actually defended on this occasion. Xhaka and Torreira were together for the first time in a little while. And, you've got Xhaka playing really well, progressing the ball. And yeah, we just had... Southampton kind of played into our hands a little bit because we had that exit strategy. We were able to go right, ball to Xhaka. Xhaka's got Iwobi and Mkhitaryan in those half spaces. We've got the fullbacks overlapping. We've got Lacazette working hard up front, and it was all it all kind of went to what I assume was the plan. And it's probably not a huge coincidence that the second half tailed off a little bit for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we'll go into. But I think one of them was, funnily enough, losing Lichtsteiner and not having a natural right back. I think that disrupted us a little bit when Mustafi moved to right back. So, I think basically Emery's chalkboard came to life in this game.
Yeah. And I agree. And so, Paul, one thing that kind of struck me is that the stars of this game, Lionel Kolasinac, I believe it's Sayed Kolasinac, and then Iwobi, who was excellent, Mkhitaryan, Lichtsteiner, I think deserves credit for a good game, given that we kill him a lot for having bad games. I'm curious, in your mind, is this also a reflection of Hasenhüttl getting it wrong in the first half? And again, not that we didn't get it right, but that the back three allows you to be more compact through the middle of the defense, but those wing backs like to get up the pitch, and that means that there's vulnerability and space where we want to get it, into the channels, into the wings, playing the overlaps. And I thought the spaces vacated by the wing backs gave us a lot of joy down those sides. So good performances from our wide players. Do you think it was heavily influenced by his first half choice of a back three? From Hasenhüttl,
sure.
Obviously.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure looking back on it, he'd have done it differently if he got a second chance at it. But as I think a number of people have alluded to, this game could have had a very different path. I mean, you got to think we were going to win this one way or another, but you never know. I mean, they had the best first chance. That quick ball over the top to Nathan Redmond's. I mean, I had to look at that 2 or 3 times. I was convinced he was off by 5 yards, but he wasn't. And they sprung that trap on us, and they had another excellent. That was a great Bernd Leno block with his body. They had another excellent opportunity minutes later, and we kind of converted both of those transitions. The first one very quickly, and very quickly after their second opportunity, we got our second goal. We had 2 goals by, I think it was 17 minutes. So it was kind of shootout at the OK Corral, lasting 90 minutes, but shootouts only take a few minutes. So anything could have happened in those first few minutes. I think he gambled, and it might have paid off. What I thought was very interesting, I'm glad he played the way he did for 2 reasons. One, the result, but 2, as you alluded to, it allowed us to play what I think we thought was Emery ball at the start of the season, and halfway through the season, nobody could conclude what Emery ball was or whether they wanted to watch it. But the high-risk living on the bleeding edge, playing out for the back, was exhilarating. I don't know if we actually always got it right, but that's kind of the point of playing out from the back. At times, you live on the edge, you pull them in. I thought in particular what gave me heart was Xhaka looked like he had fast feet for 40, especially for the first 45 minutes. I mean, there was the one ball across the midfield, which was a brain fart moment. But if you ignore that...
The only thing about ignoring that, Paul, that I will say is he's just got to get that out of his game. You could say, well, every player makes mistakes. He makes those kind of suicidal mistakes too frequently. And again, I'm not trying to kill him. I'm just saying... that's pass you can't make. I mean, that can cost you the game in a game where a goal can be the difference, you know?
Yeah. But ignoring that.
Yeah, no, please do. Go ahead.
Ignoring that. He was bloody brilliant.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
And I don't just
really
mean his passing and his string pulling. He was quick. Now, it's not all down to him. Him and Torreira on a good day is a great pairing, but just how we moved the ball across the back, I hammered Mustafi for his distribution a couple of games ago, especially his long balls. He was really good pinging the ball around upfield. They all were. And, I mean, this was a defensive action. And then on the other end, I've been bitching for a while that we don't press, and I've gotten used to it at this stage. Obviously, it's a scheme. We only press the big guys. But this was exhilarating seeing the upfront press. I mean, that's where the goals mostly came from, or the second goal, certainly. The first goal was just playing out from the back on the edge, knocking it around. And as Tim said, this was the most fun we've had in a long time, and it's not even close. It was great, just great. And I liked the fact that they packed the midfield so that they pressed us and they pressed our midfield, and we handled it and we played through it and we knocked it about. It's the kind of thing that gives you heart. We've been in and around 4th place for a while now, but I haven't felt that we actually had the wherewithal to make top 4. Now, this is just one game, but you come out of that feeling pretty good at the end of the weekend, not just because of where we're at or the win or the other guys losing, but you saw enough in that. And I think it was such a performance that you wonder, why were we so enthused and encouraged that we moved to a back 3 at one point? I mean, you can kind of pick through the reasons, but there don't seem like enough of them to say to yourself, why would we move away from playing from the structure and the way we can play?
Well, I think some of that was just...
when you look at...
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's, there's a lot of personnel stuff in there, but we've still got a lot of injuries now, and yet we've strung together a team where we have some good options now, and hopefully good options coming off the bench going forward. It was very heartening to see Mesut Ozil come on and really contribute. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, okay, the second half wasn't as good, but in some ways, it had its own gems that matched the first half, largely centering around Ozil. So a lot to enjoy there.
Clive would be proud of how comprehensive that response was, Paul. It was
Thank you.
detailed, spanning many important topics. I feel educated, taken to school by
when
that.
you consider that I went out of my way to ignore the Chaka topic.
Yeah, it was perfect. You pretty much nailed all. So Clive's on Twitter at Positive My Pants. Well, look, and the thing with Xhaka, Tim, I wonder if he didn't really sort of benefit from the way the opposition set up a little, and you can kind of see why he works so well in an Emery system, because I think his strongest passing is that sort of around the corner line breaking pass out to the wing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The way he bends the ball around the opposition midfield into Iwobi or into Kolasinac. He really zips the ball in like that. The way he likes to spray his passes. If you notice, he doesn't really pass vertically, like through the middle third of the pitch. He passes out to the wings really well. And so he was finding Iwobi and Kolasinac, and they were overlapping well, and they were doing the job. So for me, that was really good. Look, I thought our goal came at a really inopportune time, ironically, because the goal came so soon after their chance that I didn't have the chance to write my tweet about Mustafi. And I felt that was a real miss. But let's talk about how that goal developed. First of all, I read a lot that people aren't convinced by Leno, and I'm not sure why not. Okay, I don't think he's Ederson. I don't think he's De Gea necessarily, but he was brilliant in this game. He made some very important saves when they needed to be made. I thought his distribution was mostly good. Can you put your finger on anything that's particularly concerning about Leno, which is why people are still not sure about him? How do you feel? Obviously he was good in this game. How do you feel about him in general?
So I think a lot of people feel kind of like I feel, which is that he's good. He's a good goalkeeper. I can't really point to many goals this season, maybe one or two, which I think most goalkeepers will go through, where you think, oh, that was a mistake. Like he hasn't lobbed the ball in his own net yet, which is all fine. I don't get the sense that he's a really top goalkeeper. But that's just probably what happens when you spend 2 years in the Europa League and you've got an aging goalkeeper and you've got to replace him. You've kind of got to go with a fairly youngish guy who you think's going to have some upside. But what I do think is, his distribution, like I said earlier, I think has always been very good, whether he goes short or long. I think he tends to make the right decision. And, just compare and contrast to when Cech comes back in and that ball rolls back to him, and how it makes you feel and how it makes the opposition feel, because they really sense they can get something. Whereas with Leno, no one really presses him. They understand that that's not going to work. He's pretty unflappable. In terms of his actual goalkeeping, he's got areas of improvement. I think coming out for crosses, for example, coming out for corners, I still think he's a bit unconvincing, but for a goalkeeper, he's still at a nice age, and that can all improve. So, in truth, we've had worse goalkeepers. We don't need to name them. I think he's a bit 7 out of 10, which is fine. Like with what we've got to do in the squad, that this isn't. I'm fine enough with him that this isn't like a priority area to look to upgrade. He's in that little group of players, I think, maybe like Xhaka and players like that who you kind of think, well, look, we got a job to do to get back in the Champions League for 1, 2, 3 seasons. And if and when we do that, then you look at guys like that and say, well, is this the guy that takes us to that next level, which is challenging for the league? But all of those guys are like Iwobi, Xhaka, Leno, they're all at a good age where we don't have to make rush judgments on them. It's going to take a little while to get back to where we want to be, so they've got time to prove themselves. So, hopefully in 2 to 3 years we're back in the top 4. Things are quite nice. We're looking at going to the next level, and if they're still at the same level, maybe you take some of those calls. But I don't think Leno's unconvincing per se. I just think people aren't convinced that he's going to be a really top draw goalkeeper, and I probably share that reservation at the moment, but remain totally open-minded.
Yeah, I guess I certainly don't see him as being someone who's restricting our ability to achieve what this team can realistically achieve in its current iteration. You know what I mean?
he's not making anyone nervous, is he? He's not
No.
like I don't look at it and think, oh, he's probably got a rick in him today. Like
No.
I don't feel like that. I just maybe feel that some of the saves that the likes of Alisson and Edison and De Gea are capable of, I'm not sure he's quite at that level. But I don't shit myself when the ball goes near him.
See, what I will say is I think Ederson changes games with his feet in a demonstrable way. I mean, there was a pass at the end of the Carabao Cup where he dribbled it to about 30 yards out of his goal and then pinged it right onto the foot of, was it Aguero? All the way down, was in extra time.
I think it was. Yeah, he dropped it on the edge of the area.
It's just incredible, and he does that a lot. And it's so whether he goes long, it's accurate. He goes short, it's accurate. He's comfortable on the ball. I watched Neuer, for example, really control the game and essentially undermine Liverpool's pressing tactics in the first leg of that Champions League tie because they could go back to him with that confidence. And I think a keeper who is good with his feet means you don't have to lose a possession, and that is very valuable. As far as saving shots, would I like an octopus like De Gea? Of course. But my qualification for a goalkeeper, I think, Tim, is to say, don't let in ones you shouldn't let in. You know what I mean? Don't lose me the game dropping a ring, as you said. And I certainly don't think Leno does that. I want to come back to you with another question, Tim, but I know Paul had 30 seconds, he claims, on Leno. Paul?
So, I think that's all good stuff and agree with all that. The one category I'd say he's 10 out of 10 on is that he really suits our style. He really, and that's the if you like, the Emery ball style. So he's a guy who can play the ball super quick, very confident with the ball at his feet, likes being on the bleeding edge, and he's got the right mentality. And if he can add handling crosses, handling more of the English game in over the next season or two, maybe he'll go from being, say, 7 out of 10 as a general goalkeeper to 8 and a bit. Maybe he's got some growth in him. There are some saves that a Peter Cech even will make that Leno won't at the moment. And some balls he'll come from that might turn into goals that Cech would come for. But I think overall, he's pretty perfect for the style, even if he's not a 10 out of 10 ability keeper. He's a 10 out of 10 match for how we want to be playing.
Yeah, I certainly think he fits the style, if not, flawless in terms of his quality. I certainly think he's much more the profile keeper than Cech was. Tim, the game was decided, I think, in large part due to our ability to break their press and create those overloads on the wings. And it's been a meme this season, I think, that, we just want to overload the wings and cut it back, ha, ha, ha. But, it is an effective strategy, and City actually use it quite a bit. And we've talked about this ad nauseum about how maybe we just lack the right personnel for it. But what I want to focus on is playing with one up top instead of two up top. Sometimes we play with two up top, but one of them drifts wide. And I don't think either Oba or Laka are as accomplished as Mkhitaryan and Iwobi in those half spaces and on the wings. Not that either of them are necessarily naturally wingers. So I feel that we have more balance with one up top. I thought this game was sort of the clearest sense of that because we created challenges not purely down the left, but down the right as well. And I think some of the reason we've been lopsided is also related to the lack of Bellerin and not having a fullback on the right who can really overlap and Mkhitaryan's absence when we didn't have anyone to play in his role. But do you see Emery going forward not only playing a back four, but increasingly choosing one of Lacazette and Aubameyang based on sort of the greater balance and diversification of our attacking style with two more naturally wide players on the pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do. And like I said earlier, when I said I saw this as how Emery wants to play. I think having one up front is part of that. And I think Lacazette and Aubameyang works together if they've got Ramsey coming in behind them, which is possibly slightly more offensive than Emery wants to be, but that works well when we play the diamond. It worked well against Chelsea. It worked well in the second half against Spurs. But yeah, now he's got Mkhitaryan back. Now he's got Denis Suarez. He's got more options for those kind of wide forward areas, and we know he really wants to play with those kind of inside forwards. That's how he was at PSG, and that's how he started the season here. And he only really went away from that when Mkhitaryan got injured. So, and you know, we in a sense pushed the boat out to get Denis Suarez, and it's obvious because that's the type of player he wants. So yeah, I absolutely do, and I think that's quite a smart way of handling things as well. In terms of, you know, we've only got 2 strikers for the rest of the season. We got to look after them, and particularly if we're going to get into the thick of the Europa League now, the games are going to come really, really thick and fast. We can rotate those 2. We can bring one on as a sub one week, one the next week. We can change it up. I think both of them can play, you know, in that kind of behind 2 wide forwards. I think it suits either of them. Maybe if you're doing what we did to Southampton, which was a bit of a high press, yeah, absolutely. Lacazette with Ramsey behind him if you want to play a high press. If you don't, then yeah, maybe you can go Ozil and Aubameyang, or you can mix and match those players. We all know our attack is, on one hand, it's where our strength is because it's where the biggest concentration of talent in the squad is, and on the other hand, it's our big weakness because it's very difficult to balance. And I think we kind of said at the beginning of the season when we were talking about Ramsey, when Ramsey started to become a rotation option, that actually felt like that was a fairly smart way of handling it, of kind of rotating these players around. And yeah, and I think like the suspension to Lacazette perhaps gives Emery the, for want of a better word, excuse he needs to perhaps not start Aubameyang in these games. He's not scored for 3 or 4 games now, so you know that gives him his reason to do that. And you know, Lacazette scores a goal, and obviously he goes and runs over to his mate Aubameyang. So maybe he can kind of use that friendship and that partnership that they certainly have off the pitch to his advantage a bit, and they can be happy for each other. And Aubameyang still tried to tee Lacazette up for a goal in the second half. So, you know, maybe that can increase their well-being levels in terms of seeing one another play. But yeah, I think for most of the rest of the season, assuming that the likes of Iwobi, Mkhitaryan, Suarez stay fit, I do think that's what we'll see.
Suarez, that doesn't ring a bell. Who's that? Suarez.
It will soon enough.
I will wager that it will not. But we will come to that. Let's come to that later. Well, before we take a break, Paul, I think, you know, you look at this, and another thing that we talked about after Huddersfield is just the inaccuracy of passing, the lack of precision and technical security on the ball that we've been seeing, especially since, you know, Kolasinac has been playing and without Bellerin. In the Huddersfield game, Kolasinac passed at 50%. Iwobi was about 60-something%. And so when they put us under pressure, we were giving the ball away by not completing passes, turning possession over. And when you don't have consistent periods of possession, especially getting around the press, it's hard to create chances. And in this game, both Kolasinac and Iwobi were passing around 83-84%. Now, that's a very simplistic statistical way to look at things, which is exactly the level I want to stay on, so we'll stay there. No, I just think that we pinged the ball around a little more in this game. You know, the first half, we created more openings because we played out from the back more accurately, more consistently, more with more technical security. And I don't think that can be overstated. I also think that Guendouzi playing is great, but he likes to pass the ball up the middle of the pitch. He likes to split the defense. He likes to play long. And Shaq will just pick his head up, put it on his left, and ping it out to those, you know, the left winger or the left fullback. And that's not necessarily how Guendouzi likes to do it. So do you think a big chunk of our effectiveness in that first half can also just be put down to players playing football better, passing to each other more accurately, being, you know, a little more precise in their actions?
Look, it's very hard to put your finger on it, why we were so much better in terms of play. I mean, I tend to lean on, hey, if you're playing out from the back, that means you stretch them out as you play it up through midfield. And I'm sure that was a factor of it, finding people in space, being able to progress, being on the front foot, maybe having them on the back foot so that You have a little more space when you run at them. But yet there were other times, I mean, you can think of various patches of play where we had Iwobi and Kolasinac fairly static and them in fairly good positions, and yet all of our triangles came off. Just really quick footwork, really precise, really accurate, and it defies a simple reason as to why all the passes for large periods of the first half found their man just where they should at really rapid speed. Everything came off, and I don't think there's a good answer for that. I mean, we were at home, we were on the front foot, we were feeling good, we had the wind behind us, but really we were just clicking on the day. And some days it's your day, and some day it's not, and some days you chase the bear, some days the bear chases you, and we had a good day.
Yeah, and I think the danger is when this happens, it's to think that is then what's going to happen going forward. I mean, will Kolasinac pass at 84% going forward? It's unlikely because historically he has not. But, if you look at the pass map in the first half, you see a lot of those short, successful, completed passes in the defensive and middle third in the areas where Xhaka, Iwobi, and Kolasinac were. And, we got around them and played out that way. And I think that you look at that and you say, look, if those passes are not completed, those moves break down, the possession breaks down. It doesn't mean that Southampton necessarily hurts you, but it certainly means that you can't push them back and sustain pressure and create those opportunities. So, to me, go ahead.
When you look at those and you look at those passes, I mean, those were passes under pressure. I mean, they had the two wing backs pushed up. They had three in midfield. So they were there to press, and yet our passing was better, faster, crisper. So it is kind of intriguing why we're just so good, especially on the left side. I thought, obviously, Mkhitaryan had a great day with the goal, etc. But it was, in some ways, without the goal and without us having a winning performance, you could be this was another Mkhitaryan performance, one where he made plenty of mistakes, plenty of passes went awry. What you'd say beyond the goal is the Mkhitaryan-Iwobi thing just works. The Mkhitaryan thing itself works. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the good days with Theo Walcott, the 2 or 3 seasons where he'd play and good things happened in his corner, even though he wasn't the world's most technically proficient player, even though half the shit he tried, he tripped over the ball. It just worked as a factor. And, I'm not comparing. Mkhitaryan's a very accomplished, skillful player, but he's kind of like Ramsey. It's shit or bust. He'll try a flick. He'll hit it first time and just hope to blast it through. A lot of the stuff he tried didn't come off, but the Mkhitaryan dynamic, especially with the Iwobi on the other side, did work for us.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Kolasinac, 25 passes completed to Iwobi and I think 18 to Xhaka. You look in that, just by way of comparison, you look in that Huddersfield game, and it was 18 to Iwobi, so fewer, but still a decent amount. But after that, it was Monreal, 3 to Lacazette, 2 to Guendouzi, who was ostensibly playing sort of the Xhaka role. And I just think combining for those short passes, the way Xhaka made himself available and ran the midfield and fed it back to Kolasinac, I think that helped us play around Southampton and get into the attacking third. I saw interesting statistics today from Orbinho on Twitter, who has the Opta data, and Arsenal lead the league in percentage of passes in our defensive third and percentage of passes in our half. And that's a problem. And I think a lot of that has been the sloppiness and inability to just build play from the back, and a lot of that's been down to inaccurate passing, and I think we cleaned that up a lot. I mean, Tim, I don't want to freeze you. I do want to freeze you out of this conversation. I take it back. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. I would just wonder if Xhaka isn't kind of a drug for that, because he thrives in playing those balls from our third into theirs.
Yeah, and he might be on drugs at times, so I think the analogy holds up. Tim, I do want to get your thoughts on this before we take a break. I mean, how much of what ails us is just poor technical security, poor technique. I think the technical level in the squad is maybe a little low. I don't think that's being overly negative. And I thought technically we were better against Southampton, and you could see the difference almost immediately. I mean, is there something to be said for the fact that when the players that you're trying to build play through are cleaner with the ball and have a good technical game, you're going to play better?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was like a 17-degree day in February in London, and it kind of showed in the performance. Those things were better. I do think that some of that is possibly down to the fact that Southampton did elect to press high and therefore left spaces. So in fact, at times they pressed so high that even Xhaka, who's not exactly way up the pitch, was getting time to swing those passes out. And the way I've often kind of found myself describing the way we build play when we play this way, and on occasions when we played well, it's like a V shape. We have these connecting points that are really easy to see, and you've kind of got Xhaka at the base of that, and then you've got like Iwobi and Mkhitaryan slightly advanced, and then when they get the ball, you get the fullbacks up, and you kind of end up with that V shape going, and we got that a lot. And a big part of the reason we got that a lot is because, like I said, Southampton's midfield was kind of, it wasn't exactly camped back on the edge of their area. They were pressing high, and I kind of think they signed their own death warrant by doing so. But you're right. Yeah, it could just be that people had a good day, that the sun was shining. Most of Xhaka's passes were coming off. I've not looked at the stats, but I'm going to bet that Kolasinac was better than usual. Yeah,
84% for a player who's been in the 60s for the last month or so.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? We got, hey presto, we got probably Stefan Lichtsteiner's best performance of the season before he went off as well, because everything around him was functioning, and it was very obvious. It was, Mkhitaryan's got the ball, my turn to overlap, and he's not getting up there at 120 miles an hour, but he got up there, he put loads of crosses in, and he looked absolutely fine because the team was kind of functioning. And it could be we could play again on Wednesday night, and Bournemouth could do the same thing as Southampton, and we could be stodgy and we could misplace passes and things might not go as well. But I do think there's something to be said for the fact that Southampton played into our hands a little bit, and that helped us. But then from there we got quite confident, and some of the football we played in the last 15 minutes was a real return to the one touch pass and move kind of stuff that we've just not seen for a few months now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about how the second half differed and whether it differed by design or response from Hasenhüttl and how we feel about that and what's coming up. So we got all that coming up. By the way, I want to thank everyone who's joined us on the Discord chat, the private chat over on the Patreon side. It's been a lot of fun. I realize that Arsblog has launched one as well, so it was a lot of fun while it lasted, and we appreciated you there while you were there, so that's fantastic news. But we'll still be there if you want to come chat with us amongst ourselves. It'd be like a text pod. Think of it that way, like the teletext days.
I'll be over on the Arsblog one.
Okay, so I will be there shouting my thoughts into the void. In other words, it'll basically be Twitter then, I guess. In any event, we appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for signing up for that. And if you haven't, no big deal. We got lots of pods this week for everybody, so there's something for everyone. In any event, we're going to take a break. We're going to sell you some sexy lingerie quite exuberantly because we're thrilled about that. Some of you may have noticed that you're getting Harry's Razor ads at various points during this podcast, and we appreciate them for being a part of it as well. We want you to know that while we love you, our sponsors are like our children. There's no favorite child. We love them. We love them all. In any event, we'll take a break. We'll come back after this. Okay, everyone, it's time to tell you about our friends at Enclosed Lingerie. You can find them online at The Enclosed, ENCLOSED.com. Enclosed Lingerie is a Lingerie of the Month club. That's right, just like a Beer of the Month club, only better, because it's a high-end luxury lingerie gift for you and your partner that's going to enhance the intimacy in your relationship. Right now, if you put in Arsenal at checkout, they're going to give you $35 off any gift from Enclosed Lingerie. So you're going to want to go to theenclosed.com and sign up now. What better way to celebrate the romance in your relationship than celebrating with a gift from The Enclosed? And the gifts keep coming every month. So while it can be difficult to remember to keep the romance, to keep the intimacy in your relationship, The Enclosed has your back. Every month you're going to get that high-end luxury lingerie gift, and it's going to remind you of the importance of romance in your relationship. So do it now. Go to theenclosed.com. There is a perfect fit guarantee, so you never have to worry about the fit. It's beautiful high-end luxury lingerie. Just go to theenclosed.com and enter promo code ARSENAL for $35 off at checkout. Do it now. Okay, we're back. Quick wrap up now. Let's get into the speed round here. And Tim, just one of the things that I think we should highlight is the differentiation between the first half and the second half, and maybe some reasons for it. So Arsenal are averaging the fewest shots of any of the teams in the top six. We averaged just over 12.4. Ironically, we actually had fewer than our season average shots in this game, 12.
Yeah.
But we had 11 of them in the first half.
Yeah.
So if you do math, there are two halves. So what you do is you multiply by 2. That'd be 22 shots. If we're getting 22 shots off every game, we're going to win the league. Let me just say that. That's how that works. Nobody does that. We don't do that. It's a shame because it'd be a lot of fun. But that gets to my point, which is I think we have come to accept that we're not a good defensive team. That some of it is organization and coaching could be better, but a big part of it is also personnel. Is the reason people enjoyed this performance, and particularly the first half so much, not because we were locked down defensively, because we certainly weren't, but just because Arsenal fans are willing to tolerate a bit of a clown card defensively if you're getting up the pitch and taking 11 shots and a half.
Yeah, definitely. And look, let's kind of have it right. For the last couple of months, we haven't attacked or defended well at all. So if you get one of those things right,
plenty of opportunity to improve, Tim.
Yeah, you'll make people happy. And then if you go long enough with only one of those things right, then yes, people will start to complain more about the other thing. But you're starting from a fairly low bar. And let's face it, we're football fans. We'd despite what we say and what might be in our better nature at times, we'd probably prefer to see us attack better. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think, the second half was kind of interesting because I think we see this a lot under Emery, because once we were 2-0 up, we kind of not stopped playing. It's not quite that, it's not quite that simple, but we definitely, we look to close the game down, and actually it has to be said, we're quite good at doing it. We've done it quite a few times now, where you're inclined to I think we're all inclined to complain about I'd love to have seen another half like that, but actually one of the key complaints over the last few years is that you never felt like a game was over with Arsenal, whereas with Emery's Arsenal at 2-0, I'm not sure we're there yet in terms of we definitely think we've won this, but I think we're kind of moving towards that. We are quite good at shutting these games out once we get our noses in front, so during the second half, so there is value to that. It's not hugely exciting, but when you're in the business of results and points, it's very valuable. But yeah, and I read an article last week about how few shots we take and why I think that is, and I don't necessarily, said in the piece, I don't necessarily think it's a tactic not to shoot. It's just the build-up has been so stodgy and overly precise, and it's relied on players who are perhaps a little bit inconsistent and out of form, and that didn't happen against Southampton for any number of reasons, and that's why you got inconsistent players like Iwobi. You've got a brilliant game from Iwobi. Mkhitaryan, who I like more than most people, brilliant game out of Mkhitaryan. Very good game out of Lichtsteiner.
Great finish from Mkhitaryan too. I mean, that's what we've been missing, right? Someone in front of goal who's just another person other than Oberlaka who can take a finish that composed him.
And he's got 5 assists and 2 goals in his last 11, I think. So that's decent. And he's after Aubameyang, he's our most prolific shooter because he's got 2 good feet and he's not afraid to have a go. So it's amazing once the structure works, you find the individuals tend to be okay. And I wonder if in our kind of analysis, Arsenal fans are getting very bogged down in individuals and analysing things through individuals, and that's probably because we can't really see anything on the pitch in terms of a structure and a philosophy. But when the structure's working, the individuals are fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I mean, the other thing about shots is, you might get more shots depending on your system. I remember a few seasons ago, Spurs took tons of shots because what they did is they created turnovers and then they shot from wherever they got the ball. It was a shoot on sight kind of policy. That doesn't necessarily mean you're playing particularly well. It worked for them in that instance. But I think because we play for crosses get completed at a relatively low rate. And if they are completed, they can lead to, a cutback can lead to a very high XG chance. But you're not going to complete a lot of cutbacks. And so you may not create a lot of... So look, you're not taking shots from the wing, from deeper than the 18-yard box and on the wing, you're not taking shots from there. There's no shooting opportunity. So it all comes down to whether you can complete a cutback, and that's not super easy to do. And so our style, I'm not sure, is conducive to getting a lot of shots off. But, Paul, I mean, it's one shot in the second half. I think a little misleading. I think after Oba and Ozil came on, the game got a little bit stretched. It opened up a little. Aubameyang tried to feed Lacazette. Aubameyang had a shot blocked. Ozil had a shot that he kind of just scuffed and missed. He didn't get a shot off. I mean, we had some chances to really hammer them in this game that we didn't take. I want to get your thoughts on the second half and whether you were frustrated by what you considered a defensive approach or whether you just thought it was sort of the natural flow of a game that we had fairly put to bed by halftime.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a defensive approach to me at all. I mean, you expected anybody who didn't expect a more conservative second half, I guess, hasn't been watching football or at least Arsenal that much. I mean,
especially from a team that's got 2 more games this week and 3 games in 10 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I tweeted at halftime, note to self, don't expect this level of performance in the second half. But I still thought we were, I wouldn't say we were out and out attacking, but we weren't defensive. That would have invited them onto us. I just think we were just a little bit more careful about maintaining the shape and exercising some control. And as you alluded to, we may not have had a lot of shots, but we had plenty of good chances. We could have it wouldn't have been unreasonable to score another 2 goals in that second half. I thought we managed it pretty well. And as you said, we've got to pace ourselves. You can't do what we did in the first 45 for 90 minutes, 3 games in a row. So you turn it on, you get your goals. A clean sheet as well is probably as important. Prefer winning 2-0 than 3-1 or 4-2. That just smacks of a lack of control, which we don't really need right now, even if we had our own vulnerabilities in the game. So, I mean, interesting on the subs is they were kind of all driven by fitness or injury in terms of who came on. Obviously, Ramsey his batteries were probably charging down. He was the one from a fitness standpoint. And it's kind of interesting who the subs were for. It was Ozil for Ramsey to allow us to maintain the shape. And, if we're going to see a lot of 4-2-3-1 from here on in, which might be a good sign because it probably means we're winning, you could see that combo for the number 10 spot alternating from game to game, as Tim talked about, with Lacazette and Aubameyang. And that was the original plan for Aubameyang coming on to take over from Lacazette, but Iwobi sprung a calf strain or something. Hopefully he's fine. So there were interesting subs, but if the pattern will be Ozil, Ramsey, and Aubameyang, Lacazette, I think I'll be okay with that going forward in a 4-2-3-1, where each party's ideally playing 60-30, 70-20, depending on the game, depending on the fit, depending on who's in form, and generally keep this shape and structure.
Yeah, I want to just quickly stay with you, Paul, really, really quickly. What did you think of Suarez's performance this game?
You're a terrible man.
He was awful. I didn't even notice him on the pitch the whole game.
Look. You, as we said before, you love playing whack-a-mole, but you only hit the one mole. And it used to be Iwobi, but now he's playing too good for you. Now you're on to poor old Denis Suarez, who's just working out where that feckin' chicken place in London
honestly, just go back and delete all the tweets you made about Dennis Suarez. Our whole argument. Just delete it and take the L on this one.
Look,
Tim,
I think he'll come good.
Tim, no, that's not happening. Yeah. Tim, get my back
no,
here.
He might.
Dennis Suarez, in or out? Are you Suarez in or are you Suarez out?
I've
seen 7 minutes of him. I clearly know enough to decide.
But I actually find it quite funny how not many people, but a few people are like, "What? This was a waste of time. He's not playing." I mean, this is a guy we brought in on loan, and we didn't want an obligation to buy. So I'd be quite worried if 3 weeks into his time at Arsenal he'd become a really important player. He's been brought in as a short-term rotation.
I got to pull you up on that. So if he had 12 goals already, you'd be quite worried.
But maybe not. But if I think it would show a certain level of desperation if he was an absolute lock. I mean, he's been brought in clearly because the manager wants those wide forwards. He's only got 2 of them. He wanted a third one, and it makes a certain amount of sense to keep Iwobi and Mkhitaryan going. They're both playing reasonably well at the moment. They're both producing some end products. Another assist for Iwobi today on Sunday. So. He's beginning to develop his end product.
Did he have an assist?
Which has always been a
for Mkhitaryan, of course. Yeah,
he set up Mkhitaryan's goal. Yeah.
Would you be more concerned if I told you right now what if I told you a decision had already been made to retain Suarez for the $20 million?
Yeah, I'd be more worried then. Because then we'd really, albeit you could say, well, this is like a settling in period, and next season's where he really comes into it. Yeah, I'd be a bit more then. But I mean, I understood the whole basis of the thing was the deal was dead with the obligation to buy until Suarez pushed it through himself by signing the contract. So I somehow doubt that that's the case, because otherwise, why did the signing take so long? And all the information we have is that Arsenal absolutely didn't want that, and they didn't want it with Perisic, and they didn't want it with all their other options. So it would surprise me if it was there by the back door. Like, why would that happen?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Okay, well, I don't know why I brought up Dennis Suarez and just decided to be petty about that, because he played no part in that game, but I felt like it was a stick I could beat Paul with, and I just really wanted to beat Paul. Not off. That's a different thing. And I love you, Paul, but I don't want to do that.
Suarez off.
Yeah, well, whatever. Hey, Tim, are you encouraged that both Ozil and Oba, I thought, had pretty good cameos in this one? I mean, Ozil hasn't always thrived as a sub. I thought he came on and look, he wasn't like the greatest player of all time, but he did Ozil-y things, and Aubameyang got into a lot of good, dangerous positions. I mean, I think these are players we'd both like to see in good form. I think I had started to worry that maybe Aubameyang's form was dipping a little bit. He looked really bright in the cameo. Were those encouraging cameos for you, or one or the other? Yeah. So I thought individually, they came on. They did some nice things. They did some good things. I do think Arsenal lost their structure a little bit when they came on, and you could kind of see why. I said at the outset, I'm not sure that Aubameyang and Ozil are Emery's guys per se, because they don't really play to a structure, and that's less of a problem for Aubameyang because he's up front and he just wants to bang goals in, and that's fine. With Ozil, it's slightly more because he's slightly more involved. And this isn't a shot at either player. Like it's through no fault of their own. They're just both players that play with a certain amount of freedom and play on their instincts and like to improvise. And when that comes off, that's brilliant. And we saw that with the move where Ozil does a lovely flick to Aubameyang and he goes away and gets the cross and we nearly get the goal. But I do also think that it went a little bit, our attack did go a little bit. But at the same time, there's obviously more of a context there because the game was kind of over and we were controlling it, and and the game was a little bit stretched and a little bit chaotic, and Southampton made 2 changes at half time, and actually one of
the things that went in our favour was that one of the changes they made was it Obafemi had to go off
left
again
with a hamstring. Yep.
Which
I did not want to see him running at top speed against our centre back, so that was good.
No, well, Lichtsteiner already kind of had a muscle injury, trying to keep up with him. So, they went for him and they went for Charlie Austin, and that told you that they were going to go direct. And in fact, the first thing they did from kickoff was just plant the ball behind Lichtsteiner and let Obafemi run at him. And I was actually quite glad to see him go off. And that, I think, affected the game state a little bit as well. And Mustafi having to come on affected the game state. So I think the game had been disrupted as well. So when I say I think our structure went a little bit when we brought Ozil and Aubameyang on, I don't think that's entirely down to them. There were other things going on, and like I said, the main thing was the game state at that moment. So yeah, I was enthused enough, but at the same time, I thought they giveth and tooketh away.
They did indeed. Paul, picking the last few bones out of this one, Mustafi moved over to fullback, and you'll be shocked to hear that I did not think he was any better there. Do you want to be the counsel for the defense?
Well, what I would say is I think a lot of people came away from this game fully appreciating Mustafi as a centre-back now. Given that
as compared to him as a full. Well, yeah, this definitely puts to bed maybe we can hide him as a fullback. Maybe not, huh?
Yeah, that's been a popular concept. Look, all right, I'll make the case. Look, it's his first game. The poor fella, you got to let him grow into it. But yeah, he was fucking terrible. But he was good at centre back on the ball.
I love it.
But anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, well, so, I mean, I think the football was fucking excellent this weekend. I mean, what can you say? If you can't enjoy what happened this weekend, then I don't know what the fuck you're doing, because we won and everybody else imploded and had a really shitty weekend. Of the non-Arsenal stuff, Paul, and I'll actually say of the non-Kepa thing, because the Kepa thing was next level fucking crazy. What did you enjoy? From a Schadenfreude perspective, what did you enjoy the most?
There's a lot to choose from there.
There's a lot to choose from.
There is. Well, like the most important, I wish Liverpool or I wish United had lost. I mean, it's all very complicated. Liverpool, blah blah blah. Depends on how much of a factor Liverpool supporters are to you, blah, blah, blah. But we could have done, that was the only thing from a point standpoint, would have been nice to, but on the plus side, they have all those injuries and that probably from the long term, that could be where the additional points come from. I guess it's got to be Spurs getting stuff 2-1. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think the image of Pochettino raging at Mike Dean at full time is one that every Arsenal fan can enjoy. Tim, for you,
how crucial that was. Yeah.
Tim, a Schadenfreude moment for you?
So I didn't see the Spurs game because I was covering the women's game, and I didn't see Liverpool United because obviously the Arsenal game was going on. So for me, it had to be the Carabao Cup final. I have to be honest, I think the Kepa thing's being slightly overplayed.
You're such a killjoy, man. It was fucking hysterical.
It is. Don't get me wrong. It's got a lot of soap opera value. I don't think it's hugely important. But it had great it was great. It's great television.
The Kepa wink after it all settled down right into the camera. I mean, I screenshotted that. That's definitely going to be on my Twitter feed a few times this season.
Yeah. And all this, they should sack him or one of him or Sarri has to go. Do you know what happens? He's going to play the next game and everyone's going to forget about it. That's what's going to happen. But
look, this is short attention span theater. Make no mistake about it.
But for me, so I went to watch that game at the pub, and a few of my mates were like, I think City are just going to cruise past them. I'm going to enjoy this kind of thing. And I said, I think City will win, but I don't think it will be that easy. And I kind of said at the beginning, do you know what would be even more funny? If it went all the way to penalties and then Chelsea lost, because, to have the hope and to be absolutely knackered by playing Man City for 120 minutes, and that's how it turned out. And then so I left the pub the instant the penalty shootout was over, because I live in South London, so I thought, right, I want to get on my train before the Chelsea fans get there. But because the rail system in the UK is profoundly broken. I had to wait over half an hour, and
so just move somewhere like America where there is no rail system at all.
And had to, and then ended up on a platform with loads of them, which actually ended up being okay because they were all sad and miserable, and nobody said anything racist. So,
yeah. America's cool though because you can like shoot your way onto the train.
Jesus Christ, Paul. I mean, now I feel like I have to make a Chelsea train racism joke, but I just don't have one at my fingertips without stealing Heisenberg camps from Twitter, where after the Kepa thing, I'm just going to credit him because it's hilarious. He said, Chelsea fans haven't been this mad since they reintegrated the trains. I thought it was pretty funny. Okay, so let's just look forward super quick. Paul, as far as lessons learned from the Southampton game, what do you expect in terms of Bournemouth? It's an away game. We've got Spurs at the weekend. We've got Rennes after that. Both in terms of rotation and formation, what do you think he might do for the midweek?
So it's going to...
I take it back, by the way. It's a home game against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
If you remember, the first game against them was the one where he tested the back three for the first time, I think, and we did quite well, and it kind of became a thing from there. So it would be poetic if its final nail was against Bournemouth, and we didn't use it against them this time. Sure,
but I think you'd be tempted to go 4-2-3-1, whether we were playing them home or away. If we were playing them away, they hopefully come at us in Eddie Howe style. But obviously, they're playing at home, so I guess we're playing at home, so I guess his gamble is Eddie and the boys going to want to sit deep against us, which they're quite capable of doing. I think Eddie will have watched the game against Southampton and said, well, I'm not going to do that then. So it's going to be an interesting test. It'll be a different kind of a game, most likely. They usually are. So
it'll definitely be against a different team.
It'll be against a different team. Some of the names will be different. Mm-hmm. Some of the outcomes will be a bit different, even in the same kinds of situations. Mm-hmm. And I think
weather might be different.
Yeah,
different day. It'll be Wednesday instead of Sunday. Tim, do you have anything of any intellectual value to add? Please.
Do I ever?
Yes, of course. No, I mean, do you expect a rotation policy now? And I mean, but stick with the same system. How do you see him going?
Yeah, I think so. He kind of said that, didn't he, after the game? He said something about we'll play players in some games and players in other. I think that's what he was getting at. It was like, look, we'll have pretty much the same system, maybe 2 or 3, some light rotation. But yeah, we might see, Monreal, for example. We might see Guendouzi again. We might see Aubameyang start. But I don't see any profound changes to the system.
I mean, it is one of those tricky things, right? You finally click in a way that you haven't clicked for a bit against Southampton. Will he be the kind of sort of superstitious manager who doesn't trust it to work if he changes it and try to run out the same 11, just 3 days later? Do you think there's a risk of that he'll say, I better not mess with this because it worked? No. Given his comments after the game, I think there'll be some light rotation. Okay, so the last question then. How are you feeling about top 4 right now? I mean, United have injuries, and we've pulled ahead of them. Chelsea seem to be imploding at some level. We're ahead of them. I don't think Spurs can be caught. I'm sure there's some people listening saying, of course they can. Never give up hope. Never give up. Oh, hope. It's the hope that kills you, friends. I mean, I saw one statistical analysis today that had us as the favorites. Now, by favorites, I don't mean over 50%, but of us, Chelsea and United, we were slight favorites among them. How are you feeling about top 4 right now?
Yeah, we're very much in the conversation, and that's probably the best we could have hoped for, I think, at this stage. So, I don't know which way it's going to go. I suspect United might just have. I think that game against United on March the 10th might end up telling us a lot. Actually, I think it could come down to what happens in that game. I do think they've probably got the momentum at this stage, and Solskjaer not being Mourinho might just carry them over the line for the next couple of months. But they've got a lot of injuries. We've probably got the better run in.
Yeah, they have the
of
tougher
three
fixtures.
teams. And if Chelsea stick with Sarri for much longer, it's very up and down under him at the moment, because they might get the new manager bounce, and they might chuck him, and they might go with Zola, and Chelsea might get exactly the same thing that United have had under Solskjaer.
So wait.
It's.
I want to make sure I understand this correctly. You're saying we should sack Emery so we too can get a new manager bounce and finish fourth?
Yeah. Why not?
Gosh, Tim, that's aggressive, but okay.
What about timing?
That's what teams do to try and avoid relegation, don't they? Maybe that will start happening in the top 4 race. Everyone will just wait till February, sack the manager, and just get like an old club legend in to give everyone like a bit of a feel-good factor for a couple of months.
Tony Adams carrying us to fourth. I see it now.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Hey, do you guys want me to end with a little factoid that'll piss you and all the listeners off?
Yeah, go for it.
Rennes requested a postponement of their league match to prepare for Arsenal, and it was granted. Their league match was postponed just so they could have more time to prepare for a Europa League tie. Can you imagine the Premier League? Like, they'd be like, we'll postpone it to Monday instead of Sunday. Now you can play on Monday. I mean, that is outrageous.
They just have to directly contact the 4 people who watch Rennes on TV.
So shots fired. Shots fired. He's pausing in my pants. Paul, thanks for joining us. You can find him on Twitter. Pausing in my pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Tim's on Twitter. Stilberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Credit to the Discord chat for pointing me towards that Ren story, which is quite outrageous. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. Write nasty things about Clive. Don't. He's very sensitive. Don't do that. That's very mean. Write nasty things about Scott. He deserves it. In any event, we are excited. We got so much good stuff coming up. A lot of good football. I cannot wait till the weekend when we smash Spurs away and then smash Rennes, finish top 4, win the Europa League. All good things, friends. All good things. And it starts when we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Bournemouth 0.